is Block 7, The Greatest Generation. Section 3, Work Out the United States with Operation Barbarossa. Hitler's goal in launching World War II is not to defeat France, is not to defeat England, is not to defeat the United States. Those things were merely things he had to do to really do what he wanted to do. And what Hitler wanted to do was destroy what he called Jewish communism. He equated the two things. His goal in the war is not the destruction of Britain. He offers peace to Britain. Churchill turns it down. To the day he died, Hitler could not understand why Churchill rejected his peace offerings. He did not understand why Churchill would go and support the awful communist dictatorship of Joseph Stalin. It haunted him to his last day on earth. Hitler did not get why the English race, with the glorious British, he was an admirer of the English, Hitler was, could not get why Churchill refused to compromise with him. To the day he died. But Hitler's main goal, now if we remember, our map from earlier, that Hitler had conquered Poland, he had conquered the Low Countries, he had conquered France, Italy was in on his side. He had conquered, we didn't talk about this, but he conquered Yugoslavia. Romania was an ally. Bulgaria was an ally. He conquered Greece. So basically, by the summer of 1941, you are talking about a Europe that is completely under the control of Hitler and the Nazis. Hitler's goal throughout his whole life is to destroy Jewish communism, to destroy Jews and to destroy the Soviet Union. And Operation Barbarossa is his plan to do that. His goal is to literally cleanse Eastern Europe of Jews and Russians and either kill them or turn them into slaves, which would open up what he called Lebensraum, or living space for the German people in the East. That Germans were too crowded in Germany and they had to spread out, and what better place to spread out than where the subhuman Jews and subhuman Slavs and communists lived. You get rid of all of them and Germans can now live in this part of the world. So he moves to invade the Soviet Union. It is the largest invasion in the history of the world up to that point. And on June the 20th, 1941, Hitler, with 3 million men, 6,000 tanks, 4,000 aircraft, invade along a 1,000-mile front, invade the Soviet Union. At first, the operation is a vast success. Churchill had tried to warn Stalin of the impending attack. Stalin refused to believe him. The invasion goes off without a hitch. And it's difficult to imagine on the map, but German forces drive through the Soviet Union. The Soviet army had been decapitated by Stalin himself in 1937. He had killed all of his top marshals, most of his top generals, most of his colonels were all murdered in show trials. That the Russians suffered casualties that are unimaginable to us. In the battle around Kiev, the Germans took 600,000 prisoners. That's not even talking about how many people they killed, but 600,000 Russians surrendered just on one day. That's the amount of people who were killed in the entire American Civil War. Surrendered in one day. Around Smolensk, about another 400,000 Russian soldiers surrendered. That the German army blasted into Russia to a distance, the same distance between Chicago and New York. That's a big distance. But the Soviet Union, folks, is a big place. As the fall wears on, the Soviet Union is not collapsing as Hitler thought it would. That endless. It just seems that the Russians, no matter how many Soviet soldiers are killed, Stalin has more coming from somewhere. The reserves of Soviet soldiers seem to be endless. Soviet conscripts are taken from their collective farms, taken from the factories, handed a rifle, and went to fight. Sometimes 3 Russian soldiers would fight with 1 rifle, assuming that when, well, one guy got killed, somebody else would pick it up, and when he got killed, the 3rd guy would pick up the gun. The Russians trained dogs to run under tanks with bombs strapped to them to destroy the tanks. Hitler gives orders to accept no quarter. It's nasty. It's fundamentally nasty. The invasion goes off in June. By October, the Germans are within 60 miles of Moscow, but the first snow begins to fall. This is General October and General November, as the Russians like to call them. And the German advance starts to stall. As soon as the Soviet Union was attacked, Roosevelt stepped in and offered Lend-Lease supplies to the Soviet Union, which they accepted gratefully. The United States extended $1 billion in Lend-Lease supplies, a number that would rise to $11 billion by the end of the war. And in 1941, $11 billion was a lot of money. The Soviet Union, the German attack stalls outside of the 2 most important cities in the Soviet Union, Leningrad and Moscow. That Leningrad is encircled and besieged but not taken, and the Germans are literally stopped within sight of the Kremlin. But they will advance no further.